So they were like, can we do the tour in Spanish? And the guy was like, that's fine. I can just keep translating to you, referring to me, in English. And I was like, actually, no, I would prefer you just stick to Spanish. And I was like, and if I have any questions or I'm not understanding, I'll ask. And it was supposed to be a 3-hour tour and it turned into like 6 hours. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy that I just did that, because I was like, I would never have expected I would be able to do something like that. And it definitely was like a good confidence builder for me. And when my Spanish, it's like, it has changed so much. I can fully communicate now. I'm able to talk to people and like, yeah, I still mess up, but I have a lot more confidence in speaking. Now my new goal is that I want to be able to speak to my wife's family fluently and be able to talk to them in conversation and call them. And I am, like, I do talk to them on the phone or send them messages. And I'm not fluent by any means, but now I feel like I'm this other level where I can like fully actually express. Last year, I went on a trip to Thailand and I was actually checking into the hotel, or we were doing a tour and it was an elephant tour and I was checking in and there was a woman standing next to me and she was speaking in Spanish to the person at the desk, but the person was not understanding her at all. And so they ended up putting us together on the tour and I translated everything for her the entire day for like it was like an 8-hour tour. And it was so cool. Like, we were with elephants. It was awesome. But things that I wasn't used to translating, then I was translating for her, that I just feel like there's such a barrier by only knowing one language. And you can open up so many doors by just knowing a second one and hopefully one day even a third.
Hola todos. Welcome back to Conquering Spanish, a podcast where we talk to our students and we find out their motivations for learning Spanish, what brought them here, the challenges they have faced, and what's next on their Spanish learning journey. My name's Tanya Roman. I'm the Student Success Manager here at Spanish 55, and I love talking to our students because as a former teacher, I love hearing how they've overcome all the obstacles that, learning a language can bring. So today we have a very special guest. Her name is Amanda DiMartino. She is a director and producer from New York and currently living in LA. And she's going to tell us, what her road has been like learning Spanish. She has been a student of ours for a couple of years now, and I want you to listen to everything that she has to say, because she has useful information on how to keep on coming back to Spanish, even though, different situations might come and change your objectives. Okay? So, without any further ado, let me just present you to Amanda.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everybody. My name is Amanda. I am currently living in Los Angeles. I'm originally from New York. I'm a director and producer, so I work in video content in the entertainment industry, which has kept me on my toes. And I'm also a runner.
High five. I'm a runner myself. I read, in the information that your coaches have written about you, that you've run a couple of marathons.
Yes, I've done 3 marathons. I'm actually training for my 4th right now. I'm doing London in April, so I'm very excited.
Ooh, congratulations. Yeah. It's very difficult to get into the London Marathon.
Yeah, I was very lucky. I got in through a lottery, so I just applied and got it in my first try.
Wow.
I do talk about it a lot, so.
There's a reason to talk about it a lot. It's one of the majors, and being able to run London is a great feat. So congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm excited to hear you're a runner too. We'll have to chat about that after.
Yeah, we will definitely do that. So Amanda, tell me a little bit about your journey into learning Spanish. How did that begin? I believe it might have started, as a lot of people, start in high school, right? But then how did that continue?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I took Spanish in school. So I took it for maybe about 7 years, and I was pretty frustrated because I had this base level of Spanish, but could barely speak it and had taken it for 7 years. So I was so frustrated that I had this knowledge, but didn't really was able to access it. So in 2018, 2019, I decided to start taking some classes through my job. So I would go to like a 15-week class and take classes like twice a week and learn from a textbook with like 15 other students. I also like joined a lot of organizations where there are free tutoring programs and would just go and try to speak to people there and just getting a lot of experience with like multiple people learning languages. So they all had different levels.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for about a year or two and was still kind of leaving pretty frustrated because I wasn't feeling myself advancing in Spanish. And at the time, I lived in New York. So, I mean, I had opportunities multiple times a day throughout my life or throughout my daily life to speak Spanish and didn't feel like I was able to, even just for like basic things like people coming up to the subway and asking like for directions. And I was like, these are things that I feel I should be able to do at this point. So I think I did a Google search actually and was just like, maybe I should get a private tutor because my level of Spanish is so specific. And I think I'm really good at like vocab, but actually speaking Spanish was really difficult for me. So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I know I just need to sit down and speak. So I Googled like tutors online and like went through a couple of softwares and like programs and like asked people and reach out. And I found Spanish 55 through that. And now I've been with you guys for 5 years, I think now. And that was in
Yeah.
2020. And when my Spanish, it's like it has changed so much. I can fully communicate now. I'm able to talk to people and like, yeah, I still mess up, but I have a lot more confidence in speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what it was important for me to kind of evaluate what I needed as a Spanish learner because from the get go, I was kind of like, oh, I just need to learn, but I didn't know how to learn. And for me, the speaking all the time was really important to kind of get that confidence to be able to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Because, knowing vocabulary is vastly different than speaking.
Yeah.
Being able to pull that information and actually having a conversation. So before we talk about Spanish 55, I want to go back to the moment where you started looking or when you started taking lessons back in 2018, 2019. You mentioned that you took the lessons through your job. Was Spanish something that you needed for your job?
Yeah, so they were starting to do some stuff in the Spanish market, specifically in Mexico. And there was no one at the job that spoke Spanish. So we were hiring a lot of freelancers or consultants. And I just felt like I couldn't check their work. And I was also had, like I mentioned, this base level of Spanish. And I'm also excited and wanted to learn another language. I would love to learn other languages too. And besides Spanish, eventually, not right now. So yeah, I just had an interest and at work we were talking about it a lot. And in New York, Spanish is like very present as well as a lot of other languages. So it was just constantly on my mind that I had this skill that I felt like I couldn't access and I wanted to. I wanted to be able to talk. So
All right, great. So then, during that 2-year period, from when you started and when you Googled Spanish 55, you felt you had a couple of vocabulary words, but not quite like the conversation skills. Did you ever try speaking to anybody like, on the subway and streets, the bodegas or something like that?
yeah, I always tried, but I just like was so embarrassed. Like I was just like I knew I didn't fully know what I was doing and know I sounded wrong. And I just like didn't have a way to correct it. And an asked
Mm-hmm.
friend, like I have a lot of friends that speak Spanish too, and they would like try to help me. But there's a difference between like asking a friend a question and actually like really learning, like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and speaking
Mm-hmm.
all the time. So yeah, there was like a couple scenarios where like people had asked me for direction. Like I remember one on the subway and I like felt so terrible that I could not explain to her where to go. And she didn't speak any English and I was like typing in my phone in a translator and I was like, "Oh, I wish I could just do this myself and just be able to speak it."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, gosh, I don't know where we would be without those translating services, but you're right. It's not the same. You don't have the same connection, the same authentic connection.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So then you Googled and you found Spanish 55 and you began your journey with us. And first of all, I would like to congratulate you on behalf of everybody on Spanish 55 because you've been with us for 5 years. You have, shown great perseverance. There are periods when you've been with one coach. There have been other periods where you have been with another coach. And I would like to ask you a little bit about that journey. What has it been like working with different coaches?
Yeah, I actually think it's helped me a lot. And I like when I started Spanish 55, not that I knew my Spanish wasn't great, but I really was like, we were at the basic level. Like I was starting with like, what is your name, your email address, and your phone number? And I remember there was like 3 classes that we just kept doing it over and over again. And I was like, wow, I didn't have that base level that I thought I did. Like I knew vocab, but I was like, wow, I really need to go back to basics communicating here. So I
Mm-hmm.
remember like that was my first kind of like coach was a lot of like learning those basics over, learning those grammar, like conjugating all the verbs and kind of really getting back to like that kind of like structured learning. And then
Mm-hmm.
with my second coach, when I came in with her, she was speaking a lot faster than my first coach. So I remember my first couple lessons with her, I was nervous. I was like, oh, I want to go back to my other coach because it was a challenge. I remember telling her like, challenged by the way that you speak, but I don't want you to change it. I just want you to know that this is really good for me. But I like it is hard for me to like keep up. And then by the time that I was like a couple months in with her, we were going back and forth so quick. And as you know, all the classes are in Spanish. So you try not to speak any English unless I'm like looking for a specific word. So it was a really good challenge in that second, with my second coach, kind of being at that more intermediate level,
Uh-huh.
understanding a different accent. She was from another city as well, and kind of that faster pace, which just like in the speaking. And then I took a little break because I was moving to Los Angeles and there was a lot going on. And now I have a third coach who's from Venezuela. And I specifically went with her because I wanted to learn more Colombian slang. And she lives in Colombia. And my wife is Colombian. And now my new goal is that I want to be able to speak to my wife's family fluently and be able to talk to them in conversation and call them. And I am like, I do talk to them on the phone or send them messages. And I'm not that I know I'm not fluent by any means, but now I feel like I'm this other level where I can like fully actually express
Mm-hmm.
like what I need to express. So it's like I've had 3 different coaches at 3 different stages, I think, of my Spanish.
Okay. And I think there's a lot to unpack here. But before I go back to these particular situations, I want to ask you, what has kept you coming back to Spanish 55 every time that you've wanted to resume?
Yeah, there's no other program like, I mean, I know everyone's listening. They're like, oh my God, like this is such an advertisement. It is not. I absolutely love this. Like, I really don't think there's a better way to learn a language. Like, even like I recommend it to so many people. The reason I can speak Spanish now, honestly, is because of this platform and these teachers. Like, they have spent so much time with me, and it feels like you're almost speaking to like your friend. Like, you hang out with your friend for an hour. I do 2 classes a week, so I'm 2 hours every week and it like we go over my day. Like the class starts, we go over my day. So it's like we're just catching up on my weekend. Like here's what happened. And then they tell me about theirs. We go back and forth. And then we kind of go into our lesson. But
Mm-hmm.
also the format of the lesson, it's not like we do use a textbook sometimes. But a lot of times I'm like, hey, I really need to work on this. I don't know. I'm doing this wrong or I keep messing this up or I was talking to someone and this was our conversation and I know I didn't say this right. Like, can we walk through this scenario or can we pretend doing this? When I went to Mexico on a solo trip in 2021,
Mm-hmm.
and like for while I'm leading up to that trip, every class was like working on like how do I speak in a restaurant? What am I saying on the plane when I want to squeeze by somebody? Like just those like kind of slang words that you wouldn't learn by Googling or like buy a
Of
Spanish
course.
textbooks. Yeah. So I think it's just such a unique learning experience. And it really has helped me so much. I'm so glad I do it. And yeah, that's why I keep coming back. I can't get enough because I'm like, there's still more to learn, I feel like every time.
Of course. And, learning those, the precise vocabulary that you're going to need, and especially the slang words, they give you confidence. They give you confidence that you're sounding like a native and it's not like something that I picked up on, Google Translate, you know?
Yeah.
So wonderful. And so I'm going to go back now to when you were with your second coach, Ashley. I think many of our listeners would be interested in hearing how you managed to get used to the speed at which your coach was speaking. It's very common for students to get a little bit frustrated when they can't understand all of the words, and usually, we I think it's human nature to ask the other person to slow down. So how did you not get discouraged, and how did you what tips can you share with us that helped you, reach this level of conversation where you guys were just going back and forth?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it's hard, right? It's hard at first because you don't,
Mhm.
I'm also very determined is a nicer word instead of stubborn, but I'm a little bit stubborn. So I don't want to like be like, can you slow down for me? Like I want to reach the level that you're at. So it took me a while to actually say to her, like, I like I'm trying so hard to keep up with you. Like I'm trying, but I never wanted her to slow down, so I didn't want to say slow down because I wanted to be able to understand her. But I think when like by saying like I want this challenge and I want to keep up with you, like even like I could say like can you please repeat that or would you mind repeating that multiple times throughout the class because we're here to learn. Like she understands that like it's
Mhm.
not we all are, it's like a very safe space. So, as frustrated as we are or feeling like we're not understanding, I think it's really great to have a coach that speaks fast. Honestly, like I like want to see like how much faster I can get like in trying to understand her. Even like with I'm sure a lot of people talk about this too, but like with Bad Bunny specific like songs, like when I'm listening to his music, like it's another challenge because it's another accent, it's another pace, and I think it's just good to
Mhm.
like really expand your repertoire in that way. But yeah, I think it's just building up the confidence each week and the trust in your teacher. But this is like a safe space that we're here to learn.
Mhm.
So we're just all trying our best.
Okay, that's great to hear, and I'm sure that our listeners do appreciate what you just mentioned. About it being a safe space, and to not be afraid to mess up and ask, for the other person to repeat what they just mentioned, because sometimes I think we're a little bit scared to do that.
Yeah. But yeah,
Hmm.
at first I was like, oh no, why did I switch teachers? Then I was like, oh, this is like, and now looking back, I'm like, I think I was with Ashley for 2 years. I think I've like all of them have been like 2 years. And I was like, oh, that was really good because by the end of it, like it was not a problem. So it was worth it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm sure you noticed your progress when you came down to Mexico and you were able to, communicate with everybody else.
Yeah, I was so excited. Oh my God. Yeah. And she probably remembers too. I was like texting her the whole time and I was like, oh my God, I did this. Like, I can talk.
Do you recall a favorite moment from that trip?
Oh, actually, yeah, I do. I haven't thought about this in a while, but I did I'm probably not saying this right, but a Charo tour.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I did like and there was a family from Mexico that was on the tour with me and me. So it was like a pretty small group, like five of us, and they only spoke Spanish. So they were like, "Can we do the tour in Spanish?" And the guy was like, "That's fine. I can just keep translating to you," referring to me, in English. And I was like, "Actually, no. I would prefer you just stick to Spanish." And I was like, "And if I have any questions or I'm not understanding, I'll ask." And it was supposed to be a 3 hour tour, and it turned into like 6 hours.
Oh,
And
wow.
the entire thing was in Spanish. And it was not just like a look at this building tour. It was so intense. It was a lot of Mexican history, people that I didn't know, a lot of names they didn't know. And it was a really good challenge. Like I left that and I was like, whoa, that's crazy that I just did that because I was like, I would never have expected I would be able to do something like that. And it definitely was like a good confidence builder for me. And it was so cool. It was a really fun experience. Like I got to ride a horse and do the lasso or
Oh my
like
gosh.
yeah, is it I
How
forget what it's
fun.
called, but I got to do the like whole thing.
Well, I hope I'm not mistaken. It's charreria.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
So you did everything that's part of the charreria. Mm-hmm. Wow, what a wonderful experience. And the tour going from 3 to 6 hours, I imagine that there were a lot of stories being told, a lot of friendships that were created.
Yeah, it was really great. It was a really special experience. So it was really fun. Yeah, I'm really glad I did that.
Wonderful. So now I'm gonna go a little bit further down in time to the present day. And you mentioned, that you're taking lessons with Jessica, and you wanted a teacher to teach you Colombian slang and the Colombian dialect, pretty much, so you could communicate with your wife's family. Has Have you noticed a difference in like the bond that has been created with her family and you now that you know more Spanish?
Yeah, so it was really funny when I like told my wife that I speak Spanish and we started like getting into it. I was using a lot more Mexican slang and like she was like making fun of me because she's like, "Oh, what does that mean?" Or like, "What are you saying?" So then like after a couple months I was like, "Oh, I think I should go back and I think I should ask Spanish 55 if they have anyone then maybe knows more Colombian slang because I realized the Spanish I had learned was a lot more Mexican leaning,
Mm-hmm.
which is something I didn't even realize in learning Spanish. And it makes sense because when you learn English, there's a bunch of living dialects and slang too. So
Right.
it's the same when you're learning Spanish. There's a lot going on. So yeah, I had then was like, yeah, I want to learn more of the Colombian dialect or slang. And her family's from like a town outside of the main city. So on
Mm-hmm.
top of that, they have another accent too. So I was just like, I think it would be helpful for me to learn more just so that I'm better. And yeah, with that being said, we went for with her family for the holidays, and she was even surprised at my Spanish. She was like, "Whoa!" Like because we speak like with our friends too, but she was like, "I can't believe you kept up. Like you were interjecting into the conversation,
Oh,
like you
wow.
were asking questions and you were responding like." Just full on, like not just like, how are you? Like we were talking about very specific things, or I was
Mm-hmm.
talking about like my life and where I'm from and just talking about myself as a person. And yeah, I was making a lot of jokes. I always say, like, I think when you're fluent in a language or like when you do a good job in a language is if you can make someone laugh. So if
Oh,
you
yeah.
laugh and yeah, I was saying something in Spanish and you laugh, I did my job because I delivered it well. So but I'm really excited. It's definitely been really helpful. I'm like I still feel like I have further to go. I really like I language is so hard, I think, because you're never gonna fully master it, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I want to.
That's wonderful. You have the drive for it. And I mean, I don't think we ever actually master our own language, our native
Yeah.
language, you know? There's always something, that you're learning because language evolves all the time. So I think you're on the right path. And I think you have the motivation and the drive to just continue for the love of it, you know?
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
and have you used Spanish a bit more at your job now that you're in LA?
Yeah, I have. Actually, it's funny because LA is not as much like public facing, I feel like. You're not like as much on the
Mm-hmm.
subway anymore. Or, like if you're taking the bus, it's just different. So when I travel, because I go to New York a lot for work too, and I feel like when I'm in New York, like I'm always like more people are interacting with me and I'm ready to use it. But yeah, we've been to a couple like restaurants here. We've been to Colombian specific restaurants too. And if they speak Spanish, I'm speaking Spanish with them. Like, or if I notice they're speaking Spanish with, if anyone's speaking Spanish and they're talking to me, even if they try to speak to me in English, I always say, "Oh, I'm learning. Like, do you mind if I speak in Spanish?" Just so
Mm-hmm.
that like it's always like. And actually, Coach Ashley really instilled that in me because I said to her that I didn't have a lot of confidence to speak Spanish in public. And she said, like you have 2 hours with me, but the work can be done outside the class as well. So, like every week, she would challenge me to speak Spanish outside of the class.
Okay.
And every week at the beginning of class, she would ask me, like, so when did you speak Spanish this week? And if I didn't come with like a story of how I spoke Spanish, I always felt like, oh, I missed my homework for the week. So I still like am like very much ingrained in that where like for the week I'm like telling my wife like, "Oh, here's what I did. Like look what I did." And I think it's just helpful to like keep working on this skill, and there's so many things like where it's just like, "Oh, like asking for the check." Like I always forget how to ask for the check, and it's just like easy to keep like if you keep doing it at every restaurant if I'm trying to speak Spanish, then
Mm-hmm.
eventually I will remember how to say check in Spanish.
Right. And that's actually a great challenge. I think it would be very useful for our listeners to adopt that because there are times when we've heard that they don't know where or when to practice Spanish, but if you have that little extra boost of just once, at least once in 7 days, that could definitely make a big difference. And it does, like you said, it doesn't have to be something huge, just something that allows you to practice maybe the word for the check or
Yeah.
maybe to give directions. So I think that is an excellent challenge.
Yeah, yeah, that was definitely a good lesson that I learned. So,
Um, well, I'm sure that our listeners are going to put it into practice. So, besides the challenge that you mentioned, Amanda, are there any other things that you do in your day to day to continue practicing?
I listen to a lot of Spanish music, I would say.
Hmm.
I tried to listen to a couple books in Spanish. Um, Podcasts are good as well, but I don't have like a cadence that I'm doing. It's just kind of like, oh, like if I'm in the mood for this, or I'll like also look at like BBC World News in Spanish.
Okay.
But I'll try to like just, or like also my TikTok. I have my TikTok in English and Spanish, so I get
Okay,
Spanish
great.
videos. So just like trying to like incorporate it into my life instead of like taking time out of my day to be like, this is my Spanish
Hmm.
hour.
Right.
Also, my wife and I, we watch Love is Blind in Mexico and we're watching Love is Blind Argentina right now. So we do try to watch like a lot of Spanish TV shows or movies. And if it's in Spanish, I always make her put the closed captions in Spanish as well. So that
Uh-huh.
like my brain is just reading everything and hearing the Spanish. But yeah, I think that's kind of yeah, that's kind of how I'm incorporating it. And like I said, my friends speak Spanish, so a lot of them will try to force me to speak Spanish with them, and I'm like, stop, because I get shy with them. Like I'm so much more comfortable with someone I don't know speaking
Oh,
Spanish than with
really?
them. So yeah,
Okay, that's actually something new because usually we're a bit more shy with those that we don't know than, our friends. Do you think you could expand a little bit more about why that is?
yeah. Also, sorry, friends, if any of them watch this, like, or listen. Sorry. Yeah. So I think like with me when I'm talking to strangers, I know I'm never gonna see them again. So if I mess up or I'm just like not sounding great, I'm the only person that's really gonna remember that interaction. Like I'm gonna take it away and I'm gonna go back to my wife or my Spanish teacher and be like, "Here's what happened," and like recount it. But for them, it's like it doesn't matter, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas with my friends, it's like oh, if I mess up, like they're gonna remember that I couldn't speak. Like we had a friend's mom who was visiting in town and she only spoke Spanish. And I was like, oh, I really want to be able to speak to her because if I can't speak to her, she's gonna remember that I was the friend that wasn't able to communicate. So I think that it adds an extra like level or pressure. And I think that's why if in public, if I hear someone speaking Spanish or someone asking a question in Spanish, I'm always like, I'm going to answer that. Like, I'm going to do that because I know that I can help them. I hear them and I'm going to like, it's just easier. I don't know. I think it's the pressure's often like with strangers, but with friends, it's on.
Okay. Well, it's really nice to hear you say that, the pressure's off with strangers because I think we're going to meet a lot more strangers in our daily lives and then maybe like talk with our friends in Spanish. So we have a world of possibility out there
Yeah.
then. Hmm.
Also, I just remembered something else that had happened last year. I went on a trip to Thailand and I was actually checking into the hotel, or we were doing a tour and it was an elephant tour and I was checking in. And there was a woman standing next to me and she was speaking in Spanish to the person at the desk, but the person was not understanding her at all. And she kept
Okay.
saying things in Spanish and the woman was not understanding her. And I was like, I turned to her and said in Spanish, like, do you need help? And she was like, yes, no one understands me here. And she was like, I like can't speak to anybody. And I was like, do you speak English? And she said, no. And so they ended up putting us together on the tour and I
Oh,
translated
well.
everything for her the entire day for like another, it was like an 8 hour tour. And it was so cool. Like we were with elephants. It was awesome. But things that I wasn't used to translating, then I was translating for her. And
Wow.
I kept saying to her, I'm so sorry. Like I know my Spanish is not that good. But she was so thankful because no one there even spoke Spanish at all. And she didn't speak English. So for me, I was that kind of like intermediary. And even though I was like, I'm so like, this isn't good, she was like, your Spanish is fine. Like, you are totally great. Like, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And it made me feel a lot better about the experience. So I think also I've
Nice.
had more like gratifying experiences with strangers where they thoroughly appreciated my Spanish, where my
Okay.
friends just like expected of me, you know?
Of course. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I mean, listening and translating at the same time is a whole another level.
I
So,
don't know how you guys do it. It's crazy.
but you were able to do it. So, I mean, that goes to show you just how much you have learned and how much you have progressed. So, congrats. So we've talked about, all the beautiful moments of language learning, all the nice moments. I want to dig into like the darker moments because I'm sure that maybe you've had some since it's like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Have you ever had these times when you say, you know what, this just isn't for me anymore. I want to move on to something else.
I think I've had like the like pauses of it, but I still am very like Spanish is very important to me. I think it's really important to know a second language. And unfortunately, a lot of Americans don't or really aren't like given the opportunity. You kind of have to seek it out. So
Right.
for me, it's really important to know that second language. Also, my nephew now, his father's from El Salvador, so he's bilingual. So like my family is very integrated into this culture as well. And for me, it's really important to be able to communicate with not only my family, but also my friends and anyone else that I just feel like there's such a barrier by only knowing one language. And you can open up so many doors by just knowing a second
Mm-hmm.
one and hopefully one day even a third. But yeah, I've had like moments where I've been like, oh, my brain is, this is a lot for my brain right now. Like if I'm really stressed with my job or personal things and Spanish on top of it, it is very tedious to like learn another language. It's hard. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, sometimes it's been a lot for me to take in, but I've never been like, I can't do this anymore. It's always
Of
been like,
course.
oh, I just need a minute and then I'm back in, but it's never, I never want to fully step away from this. I want to it to be integrated into my life, you know?
Okay, so you mentioned something very important, just like to honor the pauses that we need to take at times and then come back, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes I think, there's this myth that we always need to be at 100%, but it's perfectly fine if we just like pause, regroup, and then come back, full force. So I
Just
think
like anything else. Yeah.
exactly. And what you're saying, I think, is going to resonate with a lot of our listeners, and also the fact that you need to have it you need to have your reasons very clear,
Hmm.
right? Your motivation, whether it's your family, your job, travel, or just for the love of it. But it needs to be very present so that you can overcome these obstacles.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's hard. Don't forget, like you guys are learning another language, like it's difficult, but oh, it's so worth it when you can communicate.
I can just see it in your face, the joy that remembering all these moments, the joy that it brings. I feel really happy just listening to you and seeing um how being able to translate or live these moments has enriched your life. So it's wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you.
So you've given us a number of tips. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners that can help them that you haven't already shared?
I think also like just be open-minded. Like don't like so there were some times that like there were lessons or exercises that we were doing that I was like, oh, I don't want to do this or I already know it. Turns out I didn't know it or I needed to do it, like
Mhm.
yeah, like especially when other language like you need to know it all or not know it all because you can't know it all, right? But
Mhm.
there's things that I don't want to work on because they're harder. And I just don't want to do it because I don't get the immediate gratification and it takes longer. But like be open minded. Like there's a lot of different ways that you can learn a language or even the lessons. And my favorite part about this program too has been that I can always adapt or be like, I don't want to do this today. Today I just want to talk for an hour and just see what if I can communicate. Like
Mhm.
it's been really helpful to just talk after in another language and work through everything, you know?
Mhm. Mhm. Exactly. Create connections and
Yeah.
understand about other people's values and culture through language.
Yeah. And even like with Jessica the other day, we were talking, it was the inauguration day. So we were talking about like the history of America and different, like two different parties and like where the Republican Party and the Democrat Party like
Oh,
evolved
wow.
from. And I was like, I can't believe I'm explaining this in Spanish. Like, I was like, oh my goodness, like this is, and I'm sure there were some things that I was like probably making no sense about, but yeah, you never know like what are going to be the things that you're going to be talking about. And I just think that some people think that when I say I'm taking Spanish classes, they think every week I'm going in and it's being like, how are you? Good. Yeah, I didn't feel great this week. Like, no, like we are talking about everything and anything. Like sometimes I even say to like my friends, it's almost like therapy, but in Spanish. Like whatever you would talk about with your therapist in English, you would do the same, but it's in Spanish. I feel
I
like it's
understand.
yeah, you could talk about anything.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think you're helping to break down a lot of myths, that,
Yeah.
learning Spanish or any other language is just textbook, grammar, things like that. No, it's actually just talking about you and the topics that are relevant to your everyday life and the
Yeah.
world, in fact.
Yeah. Yeah. It's diving into everything. So
Exactly. All right. So we've reached the end of the interview, Amanda. Is there anything that you would like to share or to say to Coach Giovanna, Ashley, or Jessica? Maybe a shout out for them.
oh my God. Yeah. Look. Oh my God. Should I rank them? No, I'm just kidding. Imagine. Oh my God, I've loved all my coaches and each one of them, like they've all been absolutely incredible. Thank you so much, guys. But each one of them have really put a stamp on my Spanish language journey and really have helped me develop so much more as a person. Yeah, I absolutely love each one of them. Like they're amazing. Actually, I still talk, even though Giovanna and Ashley aren't my coaches right now, I still talk to them too. So I still have that
Oh,
relationship
wow.
with them, which is really nice.
Hmm.
But I've appreciated all of them and they've all been so helpful. And yeah, all the coaches are great. Like I had never had a bad experience with any of them. So thank you guys. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Amanda. It was a pleasure getting to know you, getting to know your story. And, I can't wait to talk to you further down the road and hearing, your other amazing adventures, translating, telling jokes, etc. And we're here for whatever you may need.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Language learning isn't just about words, it's about connection, confidence, and culture. Amanda's journey reminds us that every conversation, every challenge, and even every mistake is a step in the right direction. Keep pushing, keep learning, and most importantly, keep speaking. Because at the end of the day, it's not about perfection, it's about making real connections. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to Conquering Spanish so you don't miss out on our upcoming stories, just like this one. We've got more tips, more interviews, and more fun language learning content coming your way. Make sure to check out Spanish 55's website so you can book your free introductory call. The link is down below, and make sure to follow us on social media to stay connected. Thank you once again for listening, and I'll see you next time so we can continue conquering Spanish together.